Welcome to the Busy Latter-day Saint, where righteous desires and living life come together. Here, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints discuss their challenges and successes in studying the Scriptures. I'm your host, Richard Bernard. Ratings and reviews are crucial to the success of any podcast, and so if you enjoy listening to this podcast, please leave a rating, review, or both. If you do not know how, there are links in my show notes. Information on how to reach me and a link to my website are also in the show notes. My guest today is Taylor Church. Taylor, a self-proclaimed aspiring life expert, is an interesting young man. He's an author, podcaster, and professional spikeball player. He is my first guest to request meeting in my home to record a podcast. He's also the first to make a video recording of the podcast. Church has a large following on Instagram. The photos he posts are powerful and have wonderful composition. You can find him on Instagram at TaylorChurch44. His eclectic podcast of Stone and Clay is available on all major podcast apps. His 3 books are I'm Trying Here, a memoir of love, loss, and misadventure, Return Not Desired, and Nevertheless, The Fish Are Dead and the Chair Is Broken. All 3 books can be found on Amazon. A link to the video of this podcast is in the show notes and also a link to his YouTube channel. The music for this program is by Marvin Goldstein and is used with his permission. And now, here's Taylor. Well, Taylor, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
This is a first for me. I've never had anybody actually come to my house.
And that's funny. I run a podcast and I've only done one Skype one. I usually do them all in person. So it's kind of fun to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, the thing with a person, if you got good microphones on either end, and I'm always playing around with various microphones. I have some big professional ones upstairs and things, and so I'm trying a new mic out today, and we'll see how that goes. It's a wireless one. Usually podcasters, it's going to be boring for the audience, but anyway, for podcasters, they usually do a double-ender.
Right.
Yeah, so you record on your end, I record on my end, and we send them and get them all matched up. And the problem I have, I was just sharing that with the audience last week, is I deal with a lot of people that are not podcasters. In fact, most of them are not.
Right.
And so they don't have the right mics. They don't.
Yeah.
So audio is always my challenge, is to try to get some good audio going. Well, now you are a friend of my grandson Chandler.
Right.
And where did you meet?
We met through our mutual interest / love of spikeball. Yeah. So we met a couple of years ago. I can't even pinpoint the first time we met, but yeah, we just kind of ended up in the same circles, and then we both ended up being in the handful of guys that take it extra serious and travel and go to a lot of tournaments and stuff. So,
well, I know Chandler's gone out of state.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what spikeball was until 2 years ago. I think I saw Chandler playing with, had to be before his mission, I think.
Right.
That he was playing with the family, and I thought, well, that's an interesting game. I've never seen that before. But is this going to be something that ends up in the Olympics?
I think it has a real chance, but not anytime soon. I could see it in the Olympics in maybe 40 years. It just takes, there's a lot of obscure sports in the Olympics, but you have to have kind of global following and a global recognition of it. And so right now, there's spikeball all over the world, but all the good players for the most part are in America.
Okay.
There's some good teams in Canada, but it would just be an American fest right now.
Okay.
So.
And are there professionals?
Yeah. I'm technically a professional.
Oh. You're getting paid.
Well, technically meaning I'm in the pro division.
Oh, pro division.
Right?
Okay.
There's just, because the sport's so new, and I'm sponsored by Spikeball, the company.
Oh.
And I get a little travel stipend and a few things, but I don't get like an actual, salary or anything like that. But
So you're not ready to build a mansion somewhere.
No. If I was just doing spikeball, I would have a very hard time staying alive.
Oh, okay.
But so I'm more semi-pro is probably a better term.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Seattle. Kind of raised all over. We lived in Washington and Las Vegas and Phoenix, and then moved to Utah when I was 14.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you've been here for a while.
Yeah,
then.
yeah. I've been here a while. I've bounced around a bunch though.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is it you do?
I'm a writer, so I have a few books out and running my podcast, like I mentioned, and and spikeball. So
Okay. Well, let's take your podcast. What is it, and what's the purpose of it?
So the podcast is called Of Stone and Clay with Taylor Church, and it's basically, I wanted it to be an outlet where the format wasn't extremely regimented. I wanted to be able to talk about whatever I wanted, but you know, as it started, themes and motifs kind of started to form anyway. And so right now it's really about, because I'll do solo episodes, but 90% of them I have guests. And the ones with guests are more about just talking about people's trials and things they're passionate about, things they've learned, in a really sort of reductive way of explaining it. It's about like what it means to be a human being, right? So it's like, I've had guests on where we've talked about the struggles of their marriage and their divorce, and I've had guests on that have talked about difficulties with suicidal thoughts and depression and anxiety. And then I've had lighter episodes where we're talking about the importance of friendship and communication and just all sorts of topics about life.
Oh, and how long has that podcast been going?
About a year.
Okay, about a year now. So
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of hit a milestone. If you made it a year.
Yeah, I started in November of 2019.
Oh, okay.
And so, I've was about a year this November.
Now, how often does it come out?
About once a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you find your guests?
There's been a variety of ways I've approached it, but most of them have just been people I've known. Some of them are kind of friends of friends, references of friends. And a lot of people have asked to be on it and might be on it someday, but a lot of them have just been contacts. I've been lucky to have a lot of friends and a lot of people I've met over the years, and a lot of people throughout the country and the world that I've kept in contact with. So most of them have been people I know.
Okay. And now, did you serve a mission?
Yeah, I served a mission in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Rio de Janeiro. Yeah, I reached out to my first person that is not a member of the church, and I'm waiting to hear from her. Finding guests is difficult.
Yeah, it can be.
It's like a full-time job.
Right. And I mean, I probably have a leg up on you with social media, because I'll just post, kind of an inquiry saying, hey, is anybody interested in being a guest? And then I'll have people contact me. Mm-hmm. But I have, I don't have an enormous following, but I have, nearly 6,000 followers. And so it's a lot of eyeballs on your content.
On Twitter, I've got 3,000.
Yeah.
But again, my audience is, I think, more specific than yours.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And
so it's a limited, more limited market. All right. So you served a mission, and now you said you're an author. Mm-hmm. What books have you written?
So I've written 3 books, and they've all been very different from one another because I write fiction and nonfiction. But the first one was sort of a memoir about dating and relationships and being in love and growing up, being in your 20s, just kind of a little 5-year autobiography about my life. Mm-hmm. And then the second one was about the Holocaust. I was a history major and got really into Holocaust studies, and then I went over to Auschwitz, and I just had a lot of ideas and notes and things I wanted to explore and it just kind of kept going and turned into a book. And then I just came out with my first novel this year, and it's just kind of a literary fiction coming of age type story.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you self-publishing, or who's your publisher?
Right now I'm just publishing. I've just published through Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just had someone else that published through Amazon. My book was done through Cedar Fort.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people do it through Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Auschwitz, so you actually visited there.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So have I.
Oh, really?
Yes. In fact, I lived in Israel for 4 years.
Oh, okay.
And
I really want to get to Yad Vashem.
oh, yes. Been there many times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all my neighbors, now this was in the 80s, all my neighbors had been to one of the camps.
Right, right.
Or
What were you living in Israel for?
I lived in called Ramat Aviv. It was the university town. Ramat Aviv University is right there. In fact, it was just down the street from me, and that's just north of Tel Aviv.
Mm.
And we are the 3 or 4 founding families of the Jerusalem branch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's Harold B. Lease created a branch there. And but yeah, I've been to those places, and my neighbors, they had the tattoos on their arms,
Yeah.
the numbers and everything. And I remember being there, and it's just there's something about it.
How's your Hebrew?
Huh?
How's your Hebrew?
Not very good anymore. Used to be pretty good. Although my wife was absolute fluent with an Israeli
really?
accent.
Yeah.
She just was very talented with languages. I struggled. In fact, I have a story that I thought I was doing pretty well with my Hebrew, and I was with the orchestra, and where they were telling about the next tour coming up, which was going to be, I think, a 12-week tour. And we were going to go to Germany and blah, 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 all the places. And so someone sitting next to me said, "Do you need me to interpret?" I said, "No, I'm fine." And so I listened, and I thought, okay, I stood everything. Well, we ended up in Germany during Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
And tried to find a hotel in Germany during
Right.
Oktoberfest. It's almost impossible. Well, our planes were always high security. We took the whole plane. It went out on the runway, and a bus picked us up from the runway. We never went through the terminal because people were trying to kill us.
Yeah.
And everyone, we were here in the runway, and people just started going in different directions. And I went, what is going on? And so I asked someone, he said, well, we're on holiday for 3 days. I go, yeah. Well, we all were told to get our own hotel. What? I missed that part.
Yeah.
And so I spent my 3 days looking for hotel rooms, and I'd find one for a night and then have to find another one for the next night. So anyway, so my Hebrew obviously wasn't perfect.
Do they speak much Yiddish over there? Or is that more?
Yeah, well, it's more Yiddish expressions,
Right.
that you get. And in fact, we used to have, I don't know what happened to, but we used to have a Yiddish dictionary, which was really great, like chutzpah.
Right.
The definition of that was...
it's like courage.
no, a person pleads for mercy with a judge for killing his parents because he's an orphan.
Okay, right.
That's chutzpah. So, but yeah, it was a lot of things like that. But no, I enjoyed Israel, and I enjoy the Jewish people. I had some great friends there and things. But Auschwitz, there's just a feeling in Auschwitz that never leaves you.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know how these deniers can possibly deny something which actually took place, but and people suffered tremendously. It's just unbelievable. So, well, those are, as far as books, that's quite a spread there. Now, you talked about dating and everything. Are you married?
Yeah, I'm not.
You're not married?
No,
Okay.
I'm a wild single man.
You're a wild single man. Well, as far as your family, growing up, did you grow up with the scriptures, or how did it work?
Yeah, my parents were active. We never did like an amazing job at doing like weekly family home evening or nightly scripture study, but we had little spurts where we would do it. And I think for me, my love of the scriptures really came from just my love of reading, right? And because I loved reading and learning, the scriptures was just another thing to read and learn. And, you know, it's kind of indoctrinated in you that you need to read the scriptures. And so, so I gave it a shot. And like most people, I wasn't really raptured by the scriptures as a child or young teenager. It became, it became exponentially more important to me once I was on my mission. That's when really things started to move forward, I would say.
Well, now, what motivated you to serve a mission?
Honestly, I wouldn't even call it motivation. I would just call it what I always knew I would do.
Well, expectation.
Yeah, but it wasn't an it was, I'm sure it was expected of me from certain people, but I never felt pressured or like I got to do this because people want me to. I just always wanted to.
Oh, okay.
It felt like an opportunity to possibly go someplace wild and learn a new language and a new culture and serve people and teach what I believe in. It sounded great to me.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, and then being in Utah from age 14, you said.
Yeah.
You had release time for seminary.
Yeah.
In seminary, were you pretty active with that, or were you the kind that just sat in the back of the class waiting for the time to be over?
No, I was pretty. I participated quite a bit. I never loved memorizing scriptures. Mm-hmm. It was never my thing. And to this day, I don't consider myself a great scriptorian, but I loved learning the context, the historical context of scriptures, especially with, the biblical stuff that when you're young, it's just so hard to wrap your head around some of those stories and understand why we're talking about kings and chronologies and all these Jewish laws, and it's all very confusing, but so I loved having some context to that. And again, I wasn't reading a ton of scriptures on my own at home in high school. I would, try to read a little bit every night, and yeah, I didn't love memorizing scriptures, so I didn't put a ton of effort into that, but yeah.
Well, now, you said you were a history major.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you go to university?
UVU.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my first wife was a history major.
Okay. Yeah.
And she'd always come back from the classes, and I guess I'm a secondary history major.
Right.
But
an honorary.
Yeah, honorary there. It's a hard major.
Yeah, it's very.
It's not, and people, I think, maybe it's memorization of 1812.
Right.
There was this war. That's not what it's about. It's about.
It's about writing.
It's about writing, and that's what I think brought you into being an author.
Right.
It's about writing and contemplation.
Right. Yeah, it's understanding historical concepts and historical philosophies, even.
Yeah.
And.
Well, it's like the Civil War. What really caused the Civil War to begin?
Right.
I think most people would say, well, it had to do with slavery, but that's not necessarily true.
Right. Well, yeah.
There's other factors involved.
Yeah, it's understanding that most historical events have a lot more, that built up to that than you realize, and a lot more that goes into it. And when you start to, what I loved about history is the more you learn about history, the more you learn about, geopolitics and geography, and then you get into geography, you learn more about topography, and you learn more about geology, and things start to connect in a really big way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how does that affect you with your scripture study of being a history major?
Well, like I said, I think to me, I look at scriptures and I want to know the context, the historical context, right? So when I'm reading in the New Testament and I come across, old city names, I stop and I look them up and I want to know what was happening. You know, was it a Roman Empire? You know, was it in? I want to know where it is in modern day, whether it's in modern day Israel or Jordan or Syria. I want to know, kind of visualize where it actually is taking place right now, and that makes it more interesting to me and more real and more live. And same thing with the Book of Mormon, with anything, reading the Doctrine and Covenants, you know, knowing more about church history and knowing what was happening in Missouri, what was happening in the United States with the government and all the laws that affected all these things. It makes it all that much more clear, because when I read the scriptures, I want to be asking questions, and when you have historical context, a lot of those questions are already answered, but that allows you to dig even deeper, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, has your scripture study changed since you've been on your mission, since you're back from that?
It's been just a up and down roller coaster. Like, it's just, admittedly, there's been long periods of time where I just have not been good at it, haven't prioritized it. And that's, you know, no one's fault but my own, because you can blame a million things. You can say you're busy, but you're not too busy to do other menial things. You know, it's not like, you know, these long periods of time where I don't have very meaningful scripture study. It's not like I'm not ever watching TV or not ever doing other time wasting activities. It's just, I feel like you need to get in a good system and kind of build momentum. Otherwise, it just becomes like a task that you want to check off a list, and it's not very enjoyable that way.
Yeah, no, it certainly isn't. Well, where are you at now, as far as, are you on a schedule, or?
I just barely kind of got back into a good place, and then for me, when I'm in a good spot with scripture study, it's because I'm excited about it. You know, it's not necessarily that I am reading X amount of pages or X amount of minutes per day. It's more about, I'm excited to sit down and study the scriptures, right? And I just barely finished the Book of Mormon a few days ago, and I do this thing where every time I reread the Book of Mormon, I get a new copy, and I often will, each new time I read it, I'll do it with a companion book, like a book of commentary or something. Like, I brought this because I haven't even really started it. I've just read the introduction, but I'm starting the Book of Mormon and reading it alongside with this. It's called Commentary on the Book of Mormon.
Yes, yeah, I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, and this is cool because this is a first edition copy I found.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I love this stuff, just getting new insights, because, I mean, listen, I should have read it way more times, but I've read the Book of Mormon 8 times. And so I know what the stories are. I know what it's about. I'm sure you've read it dozens of times, but it's like, I need new ways to think about it and new ways to approach it to stay engaged.
Yeah, that it's not just the reading, it's the pondering. It's thinking about it. I just interviewed Glenn Roylance. In fact, that podcast came out yesterday, and he talks about the McKay method of studying the scriptures, and he said there's no such method called that, but anyway. What President McKay used to do is he says you read, you ponder, and you write. And then you start all over again.
Yeah.
You read, you ponder, and write. And as someone who likes to write, I think that would be very helpful for you.
Yeah.
If you actually, either handwriting or typing, whatever you want to do. But this morning when I was studying, some revelation came as I was there pondering and thinking, and I actually started studying the Doctrine and Covenants about 4 months ago, and I read the Book of Mormon every day and study it. But I thought, well, I also want to get in the Doctrine and Covenants, not thinking that they're going to start in January with the Doctrine and Covenants. Right. So I'm almost done.
Right.
But I just, I sometimes read that, like the Doctrine and Covenants, and this person's supposed to go on this mission, and that person go on this mission, and this person stay, and I'm thinking, what am I supposed to get from this?
Yeah.
What does this have to do with me?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm finding, and I'm discovering, and a lot of people I interview that are very successful with the scriptures, it's the pondering.
Right.
It's the taking the time to just think.
Yeah.
And things come. They always come. It's a wonderful feeling to have that as you're starting to write. I sometimes starting to write like, I'll even write, why am I writing?
Right. And see, what I'll do is, because I try not to force my writing, but what I'll often do is I'll look for a specific verse that really touches me or that I've seen in a new way and that kind of moves me, and then I'll decide to write almost like my own little commentary on that verse. And then as I'm writing, things start to pop up in my head and I start to make realizations and interesting parallelisms. But I did that the other day for, again, I'm terrible at remembering scripture verses, but a verse in Moroni that talks about how faith and hope are basically intertwined, and it just hit me in a really new way, just thinking, because it said something about like, there's no hope without faith, or vice versa. And I started thinking to myself, well, sometimes I honestly feel hopeless about certain things, whether it's about dating or other personal things. I feel a real sense of hopelessness, but my faith, I know, is intact. And so I have to stop and remember and that if my faith is intact, my hope is also intact. And it was just a new way of thinking for me. And so I just wrote it out. It was about a page or something. Not even, wasn't anything amazing, but yeah, I like to search for little nuggets that stand out to me and that I feel like, I can write something that feels unique to me.
Mm-hmm. And do you write on paper or do you type?
I usually type it out. I'll usually make little notes in my scriptures, and then if I have a bigger idea, I'll go type it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our time is about up here. Enjoyed talking with you, and I'm going to have to look at those 3 books here.
Yeah.
They will be in the program notes.
Gotcha.
So they'll be in there, and I'll have to take a look at that. I don't know if you know or if you've heard the podcast at all, but I always ask to end with your testimony.
Oh, wow.
Would you mind doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I will add that mostly due to COVID, I haven't borne my testimony in a very long time. And to me, it's funny. I almost view bearing my testimony as sort of analogous to scripture study, where sometimes I don't want to do it because it feels monotonous, or it feels like I've already done it a million times, or I'm not expressing anything new. But the truth of the matter is, on a daily basis, if I choose to recognize it and choose to be awake to these moments, I feel Christ in my life, and I feel Him not dictating things, but I feel His presence and His effect in my life in an undeniable way. And to me, that's the most important thing to remember, is that Christ is with me all the time. And obviously I have a testimony that the scriptures are real and true. The church is true, all these things, but at the end of the day, I know that Christ lives and Christ loves me, and Christ is there at all times for me.